the people of Ukraine and the Ukrainian government deserve to live in their sovereign space. This war must come to an end. On Gaza, if there is anyone who cannot see it as genocide, cannot see it as the greatest indignity to humankind in modern day, then something is wrong with that person.
How deep is the scar that is left by something like slavery?
This is a very sensitive topic for different people.
Is it not a big hurdle that the President of the United States has said that climate change is a hoax?
It is alarming.
The way that your economy is changing, and oil has been this amazing factor within it. And it's obvious in a way what the upsides are. Are there any downsides to this? Welcome to The Rest is Politics Leading, and I'm absolutely delighted, sadly not with Rory, but with Irfaan Ali, who is the President of Guyana. In recent years, the country with the fastest growing economy in the world, thanks in large part to recent discoveries of oil. As to where it is, let me tell you, Guyana is up at the top end of Latin America, is bordered to the west by Venezuela, which has its own claims, hotly disputed on large parts of Guyana. It's got a very close ally to the south, that's Brazil, and Suriname to the east. But Guyana is proudly part of the Anglophone Caribbean. English is the main language. That's a legacy in part of colonial days, which ended in 1966. And I'm pleased to say that cricket is the national sport. Indeed, I've got to confess to you, I grew up thinking Guyana was a West Indian island somewhere between Trinidad and Barbados, because all I knew about Guyana was Sir Clive Lloyd, his cousin Lance Gibbs, Roy Fredericks, Alvin Kalachharan. These were just a few of the many Guyanese who played for the West Indies when the West Indies were, frankly, the best cricket team in the world. Today, 2025, it's your growth figures which are the best in the world. Before we get into this, let me just in case Rachel Reeves or Scott Bessent or any finance minister in the world is listening, just get this. 2020, growth 43.5%. 2021, 20.1%. 2022, 62.3%. 2023, 37.2%. So a country that in 2015 was the second poorest in the entire hemisphere, second after Haiti, now on track to have the highest GDP per capita in Latin America and the Caribbean by 2030. So that's quite a story. But there's another very big part to the story that we're going to talk about, and that is what's worth protecting, because Guyana is 85% rainforest. And this is a country not much smaller than the UK, but with a population of 800,000, 1 million Guyanese approximately living abroad. And if we, the UK, had similar forest cover, only London, the southeast and the east of England would actually remain unwooded. I guess one of the big things we want to talk about is how you balance boom growth with sustainability. So, President Ali, thank you very, very much for joining me. And what we like to do in these interviews is just start a little bit with you telling us about you and the start of your life and your parents and your childhood and what that was like.
First of all, thank you for having me. My life is no different from any other ordinary Guyanese life. I still consider myself a very ordinary Guyanese with the great responsibility of leading this beautiful nation. But let me first of all apologize for the voice. My voice may not be that pleasing this morning because we are on the campaign trail. And you know how campaigns are.
Yeah.
They have a way of dealing with your throat.
You're sounding good to me. You're almost Barry White in there. I'm getting a Barry White vibe.
Maybe a bit of Bob Marley bass on it,
Yeah. Sounds good.
So let me say that, so growing up was like any other normal Guyanese working class family. I come from a family of public service. My parents were both teachers. Well, they're still both teachers, because although they have retired, they continue to teach in the communities and help children all over the place. So I came from that service-oriented family structure. Of course, a lot of my relatives too were involved in farming. I myself made sure that I had my experience in farming. Growing up in those days was very much different from what it is today. I always say to the young people today that It is not that they are better or we are better than those before us. It is just that we have better opportunity today than they had. And perhaps if they had the same opportunity, they would have been excelling just like any other young person. So in those days, for example, the average age of home ownership was in your mid-50s.
Wow.
Today, the average age of home ownership is in the mid-20s.
Not in Britain, it's not.
Here in Guyana. Let me make sure I say that I'm speaking in the context of Guyana throughout this podcast. So in those days also, we had major difficulties. The country was in a period of dictatorship. So you grew up in an environment where you saw every single one who was older than you, who was above 18 years old, were deeply involved in this struggle of freeing the country. And in doing so, it became a very difficult situation for those persons because the state would come very hard against those persons who resisted or tried to champion this democracy and this freedom. So although colonization ended, we have a historical context in this country that is very beautiful to explore. Beautiful from the perspective of what is happening in the global political landscape today. So in 1950, for example, when the movement, the Political Affairs Committee was started before, and that the purpose was to advance the cause of independence and then for self-governance. But what took place was that the unification of the people was divided by external forces. So even in the 50s, you had the situation in the region where the US and the UK believed that many of the countries were going into the direction of Cuba. And as a result of that, they used the structure of the population. And all of this is now released in different classified documents. So they used the structure of the population, which was based on an ethnic mix. We're a land of 6 different people. And it separated the population based on this ethnic makeup of the country. And that led, of course, to many difficulties, dividing the country along race lines to ensure that the philosophy of communism at that time did not infiltrate, and to ensure that the UK and the US had enough power to maintain the existing status quo.
Let me just jump in there. I want to ask you about something that relates to that, and that's your sense of your relationship with the UK. I had a very long chat over the weekend with Jane Miller, who you will know very well, High Commissioner, the UK High Commissioner to Guyana, who was doing what good diplomats do. She was telling me about all the good things that you're doing together. I just wondered, how deep is the scar that is left by something like slavery in a culture like yours?
So, this is a very sensitive topic for different people. There is no doubt that there's a deep scar in every society where slavery existed. But recently I said the ancestors who fought slavery and fought for freedom did not for one moment fought for the freedom only of the slaves. They fought for the freedom of a system. They fought for a systemic freedom. And sometimes we lose that bigger picture. So although the scar is deep, I believe that the message behind that struggle for freedom is one for human dignity. It's one for human advancement. It's one for the forward movement of society. And it is in that context that I believe that society has graduated to a place where we do not forget the struggles. We do not forget the deep wounds of slavery, the indignity of slavery. But we use this moment in our history to move forward. And that is the conversation that reparation in its entirety must conceive.
Do you think it's the word reparation that makes that difficult?
Maybe, and that is something we should examine, because the fact is, this is not a conversation about compensation, because there is no compensation for the indignity of slavery. But what the conversation should be is a development pact. How do we come together and work out a development pact, maybe a development strategy for society's deep scars and wounds as a result of slavery. And what constitute that development pact? How do we help to advance on issues of mental health, education gap, health gap? And now, of course, you would know, Alastair, that if we don't address these issues, in this age of digitization and AI, these countries are going to be left far worse off or far behind if we are not able to address that gap. So the issue here is, as a consequence of the impact of slavery on our societies and our economy, the mental health, because there is no assessment. And I always use one indicator. If you look at a society that is developed like the UK, and you look at your growing costs for mental health, and just using that one parameter and looking at the impact on mental health from slavery, generational in nature, then it gives you an understanding of the type of investment that is needed on the human capital side, on the development side. So I think that if we can structure this conversation, and I had similar conversations with King Charles, who I believe has been doing an extremely good job at reaching out, at finding ways in which he himself can change the narrative. He himself can be involved in this. But how do we give him enough space? How do we give the system enough space to develop a comprehensive strategy on this?
Ellen, you sounded like you regret getting rid of the British monarch as head of state. What's going on here?
No, not at all. We fought very hard for independence. But I have a lot of regards for King Charles, you know. He has been one of our champions on the environment. He has been the greatest champion on forests. Let me be very clear on this. You know, we can debate many things, but King Charles is the one who brought global attention on tropical forests. He spent a lot of his time convincing the global system on the importance of tropical forests. Our forest, for example, stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon. We have kept the forest standing, the biodiversity and ecological value. So, you know, I would say that he has done an enormous job. And I am doing a terrible job at answering your question because you wanted to know about my childhood days.
It's fine. You did a great job. Let me just jump in, because the other thing, if you look at the numbers, right, you had 340,000 African slaves brought over in the 1800s. Then Britain brought in almost 250,000 of indentured labourers from India, 19th, early 20th century. Your racial mix now, 40% Indo-Guyanese, 30% Afro, 10% indigenous, and majority Christian. And you're a Muslim.
Yeah.
Tell me how that works.
So it's a very interesting society. I once said to the Emir of Qatar,
you're dropping some big names here. We had the king, we've now got to be a...
It's good people, because, you know, the Qatar is now known as the mediators of the world. You know, they've been doing a good job at that. But let me say this. So I said, maybe the country that can give the most practical examples of living together and bridging divide is Guyana. Because you can come to Guyana and you can see intermarriages between religious intermarriages. You can see not only intermarriages, but you can see the coexistence of all religions, the coexistence of all our people. The only time that you see strong sentiments that are ethnic in nature is when we are approaching elections, because the main opposition, and I'm going to say this, but I like to have persons here also defending themselves. The main opposition primarily use race and ethnicity as their main mobilization tool. We use national development, national policy, and a unity platform. So the fact that a minority, a Muslim person, can be elected as president tells you a few things. Tells you about the level of tolerance in our society. Tells you about the acceptance of humanity, because it's more our country more is a demonstration of humanity, how we value humanity. And maybe because it's how we are placed in South America, but very much a part of the Caribbean, our music, our art, our food is complex in some cases because of the mix that comes with it. But we have been able to, through all the difficulties, from slavery, colonization, a long period, 28 years of dictatorship, one of the things that we have been able to do is to keep that level of tolerance, to keep that level of togetherness and understanding at a manageable level. To today, where I think it's totally integrated. You have a seamless transition between the different cultures, the different religion, the different ethnicity, and a new generation of Guyanese that are coming up.
If I were to come to Guyana, are you saying I wouldn't feel racial tension?
You won't feel you won't feel it. You won't feel any religious pressure. You'll feel as if you're in a very happy environment because Guyanese are like that. They're very happy people, very life oriented. In that they try as hard as possible to strike that balance in life. So you culturally, from a work perspective, although I believe that our work culture is shifting because of the growth of the economy, which is good also. You know, we are now incentivizing 2 jobs so that you get tax breaks on your second job, and that is because for the growth that is taking place, we don't have the size of the labor force. The human resource capital is just too small to fuel this growth that is taking place.
Are you trying to get the diaspora back?
Oh, that's a big part of the strategy. So we are now finalizing that human capital strategy, which is linked to the migration strategy. And the type of human capital that we need. And you know the world is going through a crisis in healthcare, for example. Nurses are moving around globally. In the UK is recruiting heavily. In the Caribbean, in Guyana, we've all suffered from that. So we have those same challenges because we are building out a modern healthcare system that requires specialists, that requires specializations and a certain quantity of nurses. So whilst we're building out our capacity and capability to train nurses, pharmacists, technologists, doctors to meet this future requirement, in the medium term, we have major shortages, and we've been recruiting. So we are now finalizing this human capital strategy that will be used to structure the education system, to deliver what we want now and in the future, but also to examine the gap that exists. The human resource information system gap would allow us to understand what gap exists and where are the potential areas we can recruit human capital from to fill this gap.
That sort of leads me on to the whole issue of the way that your economy is changing. And oil has been this amazing factor within it. So those growth figures that I read out at the start are just sort of mind-blowing to most European countries right now. And the truth is, they could have been even bigger and even better because I get the sense, having looked into it, that the deal, I know it wasn't you in government, the deal that was struck with Exxon, the main American oil company, I get the feeling they got the better end of the deal. And so you could, to some extent, be even richer. But tell me, what has it been like to be part of this transition? And it's obvious in a way what the upsides are. Are there any downsides to this? So
there can be major downside if your policy formula, your policy menu are dependent on oil and gas. If you look at oil and gas and the revenue from oil and gas as your main source of wealth, or if you take that revenue literally and say it is wealth, that's the first mistake. The revenue from oil and gas is not wealth. It is revenue. Wealth is created depending on how you invest that revenue. So for us, the revenue from oil and gas must be invested. Invested in reducing the cost of living, eliminating poverty, building modern infrastructure, giving the people of the country and the region, because our prosperity must lead to the prosperity of the region, the best access to healthcare, best access to education, increasing disposable income, reducing taxes, and investing in the other sectors of the economy that will make the economy broad-based, sustainable, and prosperous. Now, what do I mean? Let me give you some examples. everybody speak about oil and gas. We are now in the top 10 countries for mining, in the top 10 for mining. This is based on reserve, and this is based on the quality of the mining claims. We're the number one country in forest management and the carbon market. Maybe the only country that has a structured carbon market from a tropical forest. We are going now seeking to lead the world on biodiversity. We're the only country that can feed ourselves globally, and we're looking to become the food capital of the region. We are investing in human capital, as I said, as important means of transformation. So we are using this revenue to build an economy that is broad-based, an economy in which ecotourism, food security, energy security, climate security will be our major plank.
I know you've written a book about this because your team sent it to me. How have you managed to make a country as relatively as small as Guyana self-sufficient in food?
Yeah, and a lot of credit must go to our farmers, because even in difficult circumstances, when the farmers had no access to drainage and irrigation services, when they had no access to farm-to-market roads or subsidies for agriculture, they kept farming. In difficult circumstances, people learn to survive. You know this. So in that period of dictatorship, and when I was a boy, for example, we would plant gardens in our backyard. I worked in the rice field with my relatives. So you learn to be versatile. You learn to adapt. You learn to survive. And it's in that period that Guyanese families learn to survive. And many of them survive because of a kitchen garden. Many of them survive because of a small farm. Many of them, and then the survival then led to family and individual survival, then led to community survival, where persons would exchange produce, the barter system. And one of the good things is that we never lost that spirit of growing our own food, of sustaining ourselves on our own food. We never lost that spirit of eating what we produce. Now we are going a step further by producing even what we import. Because as you know, as society improves, as people's life improve, their taste for different product also changes. So we want to ensure that we are building a food production system that addresses even those things that we're importing. So it comes from the struggles of our people and building inherently a system that first looked at survival, and after we started to invest under the different People's Progressive Party civic government, agriculture became commercialized, and now we have an entire food production system that we've been able to build.
Sometimes when countries or societies have had a sudden influx of prosperity, there are two things that sometimes happen. One is greed takes over, and the second is that corruption can enter into the system in a difficult and dangerous way. Have you seen any evidence of that sort of societal change? And also, how do you guard against the sort of corruption that sometimes associates itself with sudden wealth?
So it has to be managed from two perspectives. Let's take, for example, the issue of greed. Greed has to be managed based on your value system. If our country changes its values, the value system of who we are, what make you a Guyanese? What are the traits that make you a Guyanese? Then you can easily succumb to this notion that, oh, we are rich, we are wealthy, we can transfer resources to every family, and you forget that you are building for generations to come. You forget who you are as a people. You lose that foundational pillar of what makes us Guyanese. And that is a conversation I've been having with the Guyanese people, that none of this must allow us to lose who we are. That is why we're investing in civic education. We're investing in the arts and culture. We're investing in building out opportunities for families to come out together in communities so that we do not lose who we are. We do not lose what make our society strong. We do not lose our cultural identity. And that is important for me. The issue of corruption. Look, growth and development comes with many challenges. But if you look at what we are doing, we are building in a mechanism to avoid, as far as possible, leakages within the system. So we have set up a natural resource fund. That fund is managed in an arm's length away from government, independently.
Is that the equivalent of your sovereign wealth fund?
Yes, that's the equivalent of the sovereign wealth fund.
Which of the wealth funds that we know of around the world are you trying most closely to model?
That's a very, very good question. I don't believe in modeling. I believe in learning from different examples. But every country, we have our own challenges. And people will say, oh, Norway has the best sovereign wealth fund. Use their model. I would love to use Norway model. You know what is Norway model? For the first 20 plus years, nothing went into the fund. Everything went into the investment into the country, building a strong economy, building modern infrastructure, building a modern healthcare system, building a modern education system, investing in the diversification of the economy. I would love that model, but I can't do that in today's world. Because from day one, it is how are you ensuring this fund create opportunity for the next generation? The level of scrutiny today is far superior to the scrutiny at that time. So when you look at these countries, everybody say Norway has the best model. I love that model. I would love to use that model. But you're using a model that is relevant for today. One that invests in the very things that Norway invests in, but also safeguard resources for the future. And the structure of the fund itself. When you look at these funds that were established, they didn't have a parliamentary process. All the resources that is spent from this fund must go through the full parliamentary process. So it goes into the national budget and it is debated in Parliament, audited by the Auditor General, and all the revenue that comes in the fund, the Minister of Finance must declare it within a time frame. Otherwise, he is exposing himself to 10 years imprisonment. That's a declaration of revenue coming into the fund.
The other big connection you've got with Norway is the deal that you did with them on carbon credits, and an even bigger deal with the Hess Foundation. I think I'm fascinated is how do these carbon credit systems work? So you've got 85% of your land is forest.
Standing forest.
Yeah. And you've done these deals, which essentially, how do you see them? Are they incentives to keep the forest? Are they incentive not to deforest? And what do you think of countries and organizations that do that in partnership with you?
First of all, Alastair, I have to congratulate you. Every time I answer one of your questions, you have researched that answer to get another question that is even deeper and stronger. But that's good. That's good. I like this. So let's look at two things. One, where this started. We started, Alastair, from a position where the world was giving incentives for reforestation. Yeah. The world was not giving out any payment or any support for those who kept the forest. Instead, those who took the forest down and built out their economy, they were now giving payments and incentive to replant the forest. And those that kept this forest intact for all of humanity were told, thank you very much, you did a fine job. So that the system had great injustice and inequality. And that is because most who took the forest down were the powerful ones. They were the developed world. Those who kept their forests, were those that did not have the capability to take it down, did not have the capital to take it down. So, and they were now told that, listen, man, thank you very much. You did a fine job. Keep that forest going. And we decided, no, this ain't working. This cannot work. There must be a system of compensating those countries who kept the forest and who are committed to keeping it. So we said, listen, we don't only want a market-based system to compensate those who have kept the forest, but we want to go a step further. We want to create a mechanism through which we're audited, through which our forest is monitored, because we wanted accountability in the system. So we subjected our entire forest to an evaluation, to an audit, and that forest is monitored externally. Now, for a country to do that, that is the top 10 in mining, that has oil and gas, tells you about the credibility of what we are building. It tells you about the value about what we are building and how much we believe in this forest and what the forest offers for the rest of the world. So we subjected ourselves. That is why we're the only forest that has carbon credit that are certified at jurisdictional scale. That is the entire forest. We're not talking about a forest in one area. This is jurisdictional scale in its entirety. So it is on that basis that we started the global movement on getting valuation done and developing this carbon market for tropical forests. At Glasgow, we were happy. Prime Minister Boris supported at that COP forest being on the agenda also. Today is a struggle to keep forests on the COP agenda and to get biodiversity on that agenda. But we have to continue that struggle.
I should just jump in there. You've just broken one of the cardinal rules of this podcast. You said something almost positive about Boris Johnson that is not allowed under any circumstances, but I'll now allow you to carry on.
but maybe it's my style. I first look at all the positive things about people.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
I believe that we must keep positive energy in the room all the time.
Okay, good. I've got you.
I really have to be careful with you now.
We've got COP coming up in Brazil, right? And Brazil is a very, very close ally of yours. And I just want to know what the Trump-Lula relationship, whether that's something that keeps you awake at night as well. So Trump suddenly whacks 50% tariffs on Lula because of Bolsonaro and the court case against him, which is kind of mind-blowing to think an American president does that, but he's done it. You're a very small country, not far from America, allied with Brazil. I just wondered how that makes you feel.
So I want to first say that, we are a very small country, but big things start with small ideas. And I believe that it is a thinking power and what you present that is large in terms of the global landscape. But you mentioned something very important. There is no doubt that the success of COP depends heavily on the developed world, especially the US, China and India. They're large economies and large population. And if there is strained relationship between the hosts of COP and the US, that definitely dampens the ability to get compromise. Or it definitely, make it harder for us to get compromise and for us to have a negotiated outcome at COP. COP is really a forum that try as far as possible to have a negotiated outcome. And the structure of the negotiation is that, one major partner opting out, the entire process falls. So it is important, I think, that the international community find a mechanism through which we intervene to ensure that there is stability in all the relationship heading into COP and ensuring that the temperatures are brought down so that we can have an effective COP. For us to sit and pretend that this type of relationship would not have an impact on COP, I think would be doing an injustice to what we want to achieve at COP. And here is where I think the developed countries, the top 7, need to get together and to find a mechanism through which we get past this little hurdle. I think it's a little hurdle. It's recoverable. We can move forward. The participation of the U.S. In COP, when I say participation, I'm not talking about attendance. The full participation of the U.S. in COP is key. It's critical, especially at this stage of our development, global development, and all of this taking place around the world. The worst thing we want now is to have a conflict or destabilization of the COP agenda.
But is it not a big hurdle that the President of the United States has said that climate change is a hoax? Isn't it a big hurdle that some of the big democracies of the world, this debate is now being run often by the far right, who are part of the whole sort of climate change denial movement? That must make you alarmed.
It is alarming, but we have to also go back to the structure of these meetings. And I'm very, big on structure. So let us look at, you spoke about the far right. So there's the far right and the far left. They're what I would say extremism on both sides of the equation. We have not been able to bring all the stakeholders around the same table. So we can't say we want to address these climate issues, but the major emitters, or those we consider to be the major emitters, are not part of the conversation. Mm. When are we going to be mature enough to bring everyone around the table, bring in those who are deniers, bring in the extremists, bring in the oil and gas company, and let us work out a roadmap. Let us work out an agenda in which we will have more resources spent on research and development, technological advancement, adaptation mitigation. Let those companies play a greater role in climate financing access, so that the conversation is part of the entire ecosystem is part of the conversation. Now, let us look at the mixture of and why we have these extreme views. There is no way we can say in today's context, where you still have energy insecurity in many countries, you have energy poverty in many countries, that we'll have a world without fossil fuel by 2050. It can't happen. We've already seen the challenges that the UK is facing and Germany is facing with their massive transition in terms of energy. So we know the science, as the science tells us climate change is real, the science also, the numbers tell us that we can't achieve a fossil fuel world by 2050 or next 100 years. Fossil fuel will continue to play a role. The question is, who will produce it? So let's say, for example, that only 20% of the fuel mix of the world by 2050 will come from fossil fuel. Then the next big question is, who will produce that 2050? And if climate is the main factor, then it must be the country that can produce it with the least effect on climate change, and that will put us number one, basically, Guyana. But the question is, how do we find this balance? How do we agree that we will still need fossil fuel? How do we get the oil companies and their shareholders to understand that they too have a future that is sustainable in transitioning their investment, in moving towards renewable, letting them know that in this move to renewable, they will not lose market share, but find a mechanism in which they too can maintain their market share so that they see a viable future. They don't see a future in this transition in which their businesses will be wiped out, their economies will be wiped out, countries that are completely dependent on oil and gas. And you have seen this. Look at the Middle East. You're seeing countries that you never thought would have built out a tourism sector the way they're building out, now investing in that. You're seeing countries who have absolutely no natural assets for food production are now investing in putting those assets in place to produce their own food. To say there is no action or there is inaction is also stretching the argument. You know, many countries are taking great steps forward. The problem, though, is that all the stakeholders are not around the table. And we continue to make the same mistake year after year. Make this a debate between two extremism and not a debate on what the plan should be and how everyone can be involved in that plan.
I mentioned in the introduction Venezuela, and you have this ongoing situation where Venezuela essentially says that 2/3 of your country belongs to them. And Maduro has a referendum and blah, 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 blah. You go to the international court. Is this just one of those issues that both sides have to kind of make the right noises about to keep their own people happy? Or is it something that has to be ultimately resolved? And how can it be resolved?
Let me start by saying we don't make noise at all about this. because, this controversy that is raised by Venezuela can destabilize development. It can destabilize progress. It can destabilize investment, investors' confidence. So no country, no mature country, no democratic country, no rule-based country, no law-based country ever want this type of distraction. For them, it may be noise. For them, it might be speaking to their own local population. But for us, it has major effects. And they have acted in recent years on that noise. They have done things that are in breach of international law, that are in breach of good neighborly behavior. And we have always approached this first with diplomacy as our first guardrail, ensuring that we utilize every diplomatic effort. We utilize the global systems and institutions to advance our cause with the controversy that they raise. For us, the border has been completely settled in the 1899 arbitral award. The entire world knows this. There is nothing to support their claim, but we have encouraged them to take your claim, take this controversy to the International Court of Justice, but at the end of it, respect the outcome of the process. And if you look at their history in the court, they start by saying, the court doesn't have jurisdiction. They then went to the court and argued the case of jurisdiction. They lost twice. After they lost on the issue of jurisdiction, they say, okay, we will not respect the court. But they are participating fully in the process of the court. It's like playing cricket. And you're saying that, okay, we're going to play under conditions of the UK for swing bowling. And after we realize we can't survive the swing bowling, we then say, the conditions was not good enough. We're not accepting the results of the game.
I hear what you're saying on that. And I think I suspect most of the people listening to this completely support what you say on that. You've had an interesting position this year in particular, because the way the United Nations work, you have these 5 permanent members on the Security Council, of which the UK is one, and then these other countries come on for around, in this case, a year. And you've had a hell of a year to be part of the United Nations Security Council. Very briefly, what's your basic position on Russia-Ukraine? I know these are massive subjects, but we talk about them on the podcast all the time. Russia-Ukraine and also Israel-Palestine.
So first of all, on Russia-Ukraine, we have made our position very clear. Every country has a right to sovereignty, and every country's sovereignty must be fully respected. And I believe that the people of Ukraine and the Ukrainian government deserve to live in their sovereign space. And I believe that there must be de-escalation, and then this war must come to an end. It's not only costing Russia and Ukraine, it's also costing the world. I give this example. If you look at the resources that has to be diverted from the UK, the EU, from the US in this war, a lot of those resources could have been spent on humanitarian efforts, on restoring democracy, because every time you divert resources to conflict, you're removing global financing for important issues that are now postponed for a later date. So our position is clear on Ukraine. On Gaza, our position is also very clear. There's only one solution. That's a two-state solution. And what is happening in Gaza now, if there is anyone who cannot see it as genocide, cannot see it as the greatest indignity to humankind in modern day, then something is wrong with that person. What is happening in Gaza is unbelievable, But again, we believe that it's through dialogue, discussions, negotiation, and it's through the international community not only taking principal position on Ukraine and Gaza and Haiti, but also acting on those principal positions. When you look, Alastair, at the complexity of the world, and you look at the resources that goes to Ukraine now, for example, as against the resources that went to Haiti for the last 40 years. And look at the fact that Haiti is one of the only countries that paid for its independence. People rightfully ask the question, are we living in two different worlds? Or are they two different standards that is governing the global policy-making environment. And we have to avoid these discussions. And the only way we can avoid those discussions is to go back to setting out the basis on which global multilateralism, the big question is if multilateralism is failing today. And how do we address this issue? Because if multilateralism fail, then globalization would also fail. We're talking about globalization and common borders and common market, but we have different rules for different segments of humanity.
But that's why the American position is so challenging at the moment. What's your sense of the UN? Do you think the UN in its current formulation is fit for purpose for these challenges that we've got?
Well, the very conflicts that you're raising, let's look at Haiti, Ukraine, Gaza, has really dealt a severe blow to the UN. Because if the UN is unable to meet its mandate, and basically that is what is happening, and that is what is leading to the conversation as to whether the UN is failing. Because if we are all part of this family, the United Nations, and nobody respects the rules of the family or respect the decision of the family, then you will have difficulties in the future. Where does it stop? So is there need for reform? Most definitely. The current configuration points to the fact that we cannot get a United Nations system that lead to action, lead to a lot of reports, a lot of talk, but not action. And the reform of the UN must be bold enough to lead to a situation where there's compliance with the rules, where there is acceptability of UN decisions, and where there's respect. The reform must be bold enough. The system cannot be hijacked. And many leaders in the developing world are of the view that the United Nations system is hijacked. Many, if you look at the resources that are spent at the UN for some of these reports and a number of committees that you have doing reports on every single developing country, and then you have to go and answer before a committee on every one of those reports, many of which are based on perception and not based on facts. These are things that need to be addressed. There can't be different systems of reporting for different countries or different regions. There must be a common system through which everyone is held accountable.
Do you think that most of the countries that you're talking about would prefer to have a system that did not involve the veto of the Big Five?
We have to extend that. The Security Council must be expanded. Look at the population, the global population and representation. If it's based on representation, we always talk about democracy and the level of representation in a democratic system. There is no democratic system in the Security Council when you look at the representation. So these things must be fixed. We can't postpone these problems. We have to fix these problems. And the way you fix these problems is by frank conversation, accepting that the system is failing, and accepting that there is need for reform and what areas of reform are critical. Every single time you have a reform of the system, it's about dealing with other issues except the issues that are foundational. The issue of the United Nations Security Council and the size and the representation is a foundational issue. But we always avoid the foundational debate. And we go to, the blossoms that are dropping. Because we always look to make the system seem as if it's functioning, by always picking the low-hanging fruit. But the tree might be rotting from the root, but we're just picking the low-hanging fruit and we're not taking care of the root. We have to get to the root and fix the root.
Now listen, I could talk to you all day. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, but you've got a campaign, you've got a voice to protect. I just want to ask you one final question. It is about cricket, because when I was growing up, Clive Lloyd, Lance Gibbs, I remember taking a day off. I remember bunking off school because I heard a rumour that Lance Gibbs was going to be bowling in a charity match in Scarborough. That's how big these guys were in my life. But West Indies cricket, what has happened to it? It's just, we've just had this amazing test series in Britain, England against India, one of the best test series ever.
Beautiful. I've been looking at the highlights.
But what's happened to West Indies?
Let me make it clear. West Indies is not short on talent. We are short on talent development and management. The board need to take responsibility, and the system has failed us. We were so good, we were too good to accept that we don't need to invest in the development of the talent. So we failed to invest in the development of the talent. The talent exists. I want to make it very clear. We have amazing talent, but the development of that talent, the development of our pitches, the development of our facility, the expansion of the school program in cricket, and then the global change in cricket has affected us tremendously. We're calypso-like cricketers. We love the flamboyance. We love to play shots. We love the excitement. And let us be also very honest. I want you to give me a few moments on this. The global system designed new rules to kill West Indies cricket.
Oh.
I know you'll be excited about that. When we had the best fast bowling in the world, and no one could have batted our fast bowling, they changed the rules because our fast bowling was too furious, and no one could have stood up and faced our fast bowling. So they changed the rules for fast bowling. Nobody looks at that. So the world gave West Indies cricket a major blow by changing the rules because they could not withstand the strength of our bowling attack. They could not withstand the pace of our bowling attack. So the rules was changed to suit the powerful nations in cricket at that time.
Name names. England,
go back to the headlines. Go back to the headlines. And Graham Gooch, when there was a series that he played. Two persons I can say, Keith Atherton and Graham Gooch.
Mike Atherton,
sorry. I talking about our own Atherton. When they played in the West Indies, at the end of their test series, I remember both of them showing off the blows that they took on their body, the bruise and the swelling on their body. But they stood up and they faced that bowling attack and they took the body blow. But those were exciting days for West Indies cricket. And as a result of the changes in the rules, the pitches changed. We didn't have the exciting fast bowling pitches anymore. Can you imagine? Spin is the main thing now in the West Indies, right? From the history of fast bowling. That tells the story. So the international system failed us, and the international system is now giving us a second blow. And English cricket, you have to be careful, because I said to leaders from India that India is now, who suffered the impact of colonization, is now using cricket to colonize the world. Because India does not allow their players to participate. You have to give UK credit. You have to give the UK credit. When they were at the top, at least they allowed their players and our players to play in all of their leagues. Many West Indian players developed their ability to play swing bowling because they were playing in your first-class cricket at home. That is how they got the opportunity to play good swing bowling and to play spin bowling. India is a great cricketing nation. You have to give them credit. They have the population. But they have created a business ecosystem around cricket that they control. And we have to address this. It's okay, you can control the business ecosystem, but you cannot deny the rest of the world. You cannot deny the West Indies what is required, the type of support that is required. We financed global cricket. We brought the excitement to global cricket when the market was very small. And today, we have these challenges. There seems to be an abandonment of the West Indies because it does not make business sense. Can you imagine that? If it does not make business sense to invest in West Indies cricket or to give more resources for the rebuilding of West Indies cricket, then something is wrong. We in Guyana, we are working hard to build a cricketing product to meet what the global changes are. And we don't get the support from India. We don't get the... So I want the English Cricket Board and Guyana Cricket Board and the Australian Cricket Board to sit down and to say, how do we develop a product that gives that level of excitement. That is why we started the Global Super League.
Yeah.
Now we have built, this is a poor developing country, a country that is now on the rise, that decided we're going to invest in this for the region and for the world. So we have, the Champions League was abandoned. We started the Global Super League. Now, when we have, in 2 years, built this product, the English Cricket Board and India Cricket Board, the two most powerful cricket boards, decided they're going to get together and talk about bringing back the Champions League without even any conversation with a country that has built back a global Super League. Now, how fair is that? So when we talk about cricket now, it's not only the failure, and I'm not walking away from, I said, we have failed ourselves to develop the talent, to invest in the talent. The management of West Indian cricket is failing us. You know, we have to review the expenditure profile, how much we're spending in the administration of cricket rather than cricket itself. But we're not short on talent. We would have contributed significantly to developing this game to where it is today, to bringing the level of excitement and global presence and market presence to where it is today. And if the global system really want to take cricket into new markets like North America, you can't do that with the exclusion of the West Indies. So I think that there need to be reform here also, and we need to understand, the ICC need to understand that they have a responsibility to West Indies in helping us to rebuild this product.
Well, you know what I love about that is that you are, if anything, even more passionate about cricket than you are about biodiversity.
Well, we didn't get to that subject, but I'm very passionate about that. But cricket is such an important part of our identity.
Yeah.
When we were fighting for recognition in the world as a region, it is cricket that gave us that recognition. It is cricket that gave us that branding. What cricket did for tourism, the English tourists would come down to enjoy the beaches that they got exposed to as a result of cricket in many instances. So cricket has given us too much for us not to be passionate about it. It has given us an identity. You know, these guys, Clive Lloyd, Rohan Kanai, Sobers, you know, these guys, Holden, Courtney Ambrose, Walsh, Marshall, they help to shape an identity as to who we are as a people.
When I was a journalist on the Daily Mirror, I once faced Malcolm Marshall when he passed 100 miles an hour for the first time, and we did it, and it was, I think he bowled 6 balls at me, and I think I might have hit one, which didn't go anywhere. Listen, I love your passion for it, and actually, I normally don't plug other people's podcasts, but there's a podcast in Britain done by a couple of guys, a DJ called Greg James and Jimmy Anderson, who's from the greatest footballing town in the world, Burnley, but he's obviously one of the greatest cricketers of all time. They would love to talk to you because they just do a kind of cricket passion podcast. So I'm going to shove you their way at some point.
I hope we could do this back again sometime. We can go deeper in some of the subject matters. I want to invite you to come and to see what is happening and to make your own evaluation. But I want you to also to be a part of this biodiversity leadership that we are presenting to the world. Listen, the world has lost 60% of its biodiversity in the last 50 years. Biodiversity is the most important thing for medical advancement, for pharmaceuticals, for indigenous culture, indigenous identity, indigenous language, and for an ecosystem that will sustain life itself. If we continue to lose this biodiversity, we're going to lose our ability to be food secure as a world, because biodiversity is critically linked to food security. So biodiversity, it's the new frontier that must be addressed, that is being swept under the carpet, and we need to change this. And you and I and the world need to work on changing this.
Excellent. Well, I'd love to be part of that. And when I was talking to Jane Miller, the High Commissioner, she was telling me recently that 2 British bird watchers, twitchers as we call them, had been out in Guyana, and they stumbled across 2 species of bird that they didn't know existed.
Yeah, we keep just finding new species because of the way we have kept the environment intact. But Jane herself has been doing a good job at demonstrating the beauty of Guyana. And our relationship with the UK, I know you hinted to that question, has grown tremendously. We have a very strong relationship with the UK. David Lammy, of course, has a heritage in Guyana. But I would say that our relationship with the UK has grown enormously, not only from a trade and economic perspective, from a people-to-people perspective, from a cultural perspective, and from a human capital perspective. So we want to continue to work on this relationship, like our relationship with the US, our relationship with the Middle East, our relationship with the developing world, because we don't want to find ourselves as part of the global problem. We want to use everything that is available before us to be part of the global solution.
Well, that's a lovely place to end. Thanks for all your time. I've really, really enjoyed this.
Thank you very much. It was great talking to you. Looking forward to welcoming you in Guyana.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.